We read over 100 books and articles on procrastination. Each book had clever ideas and little nuances, but looking at the big picture, we realized that they all sort of repackage and repeat the same three big ideas. The first idea is that procrastination happens when our negative emotions outweigh our positive emotions related to the task. A study in 2014 by Gustafsson suggests that there's a genetic component to procrastination. Humans have evolved to act in the short term, to flee from predators, find food, and reproduce, putting off things that are non-urgent. Plus, they weren't even sure they would survive till tomorrow to even get it done. But as civilization progressed and our frontal lobes evolved, we started separating ourselves from other animals with the ability to plan and reflect and analyze our own decisions. But this created problems for procrastination. Eckhart Tolle, author of The Power of Now, says that our obsession with what happened in the past and what could possibly go wrong in the future leaves us paralyzed to act in the present. I remember studying for the MCAT at Cajun Academy and thinking, what if I fail this exam and don't get into med school and never become a doctor and become homeless and live on the street? Or what if I post a YouTube video and I do something embarrassing and people laugh at me for being a loser and then I'll never find a wife? And as a result, this self-sabotage type of thinking causes us to procrastinate. So how do we shift out of these negative emotions and more towards positive emotions? Well, Dale Carnegie, author of How to Stop Worrying and Start Living, recommends that we live one day at a time. Just focus on the present. But as we all know, sometimes it's impossible not to think about the future. So if we're gonna think about the future anyway and what could happen, we should at least try to attach positive emotions to it. One way to do so, as Steven Pressfield, author of The War of Art, says, is to try and stop thinking about ourselves so much and think about other people and the greater good. For example, if you are meant to cure cancer or make some great historical discovery like inventing portal technology or the next sriracha, then for the sake of all humanity, don't procrastinate. Give it everything you got because, hey, you might just change the course of history. Another cool tactic that addresses our negative emotional state comes from Francesco Cirillo, author of The Pomodoro Technique, who recommends using a distraction cheat sheet. He recommends having a sheet of paper and pen next to us when we prepare to work. Anytime we have negative thoughts or emotions, feelings of doubt or fear, or are paralyzed by procrastination, we should collect those thoughts and write them down. This is a way to offload those ideas from our mind so we aren't constantly thinking about them every 30 seconds. And it's also a good way to gain insight into what types of negative thoughts and emotions we experience during our work, because insight is the first step towards personal change. Another commonly overlooked negative emotion that leads to procrastination is boredom. Unfortunately, in the current digital age of smartphones, we've all become experts at escaping boredom because of how quickly and easily we can get a dopamine hit. I can't even count how many times a day I get even a tiny bit bored. I'll instinctively grab my phone and hop on social media or TikTok or Twitter or something, and there goes like 30 minutes of my day. Cal Newport, author of Deep Work, has a unique approach to this problem. He doesn't recommend that we resist the urge to use social media, rather that we embrace the feeling of boredom. The more comfortable we get doing nothing, sitting with our thoughts and taking back control over the attention wasteland of the internet, the better we'll get at preventing boredom from causing procrastination. So when boredom strikes, don't whip out the phone, and instead just sit in silence and stare at poorly painted gray walls. Doing this repeatedly will condition our mind to be okay with doing boring things, and over time, we'll procrastinate less on our projects, on our side hustles, or studying for an exam. So all three big ideas in this video are universally applicable. But here at Cajun Academy, all our rookies are matched into one of three clubs based on our brain type or unique neurobiology. So if you're in Kitsune Club like me, I strongly advise addressing this first idea when thinking about procrastination. It's because our brain type is highly sensitive to fluctuating emotions, and we tend to be more anxious and overthink things, which creates more problems than actually exist.
Alright, so the second idea is that procrastination happens when there's too much friction to getting started. An object at rest stays at rest, but an object in motion stays in motion. If we can find enough momentum to get the ball rolling, it's easier to keep going. It's simple laws of physics. This idea really speaks to those of us in Kuma Club. Kumas are some of the highest achievers out there, but most of them take forever to get started and often lack motivation. But here's the thing. popular opinion is that we think we're supposed to get motivated before doing something. We think that motivation initiates action. But Jeff Hayden, author of The Motivation Myth, argues that it's the other way around, where instead it's taking action that creates motivation. When we see the progress, then we're motivated to keep going. I was skeptical of this idea at first because how do we take action when we aren't motivated? Like, that's the whole problem in the first place. But then he points out that we take action all the time without motivation, like brushing our teeth or taking a shower. So this is the basis of Mark Manson's do something principle. Just do something. We can extract motivation from accomplishing small mundane tasks, for example in a morning routine, and we can physically get ourselves moving to tackle bigger tasks, leading into a snowball effect, gaining momentum. So a lot of the books we read offer rules to build momentum, and I mean a lot of rules. There's the 5-minute rule, there's a 2-second rule, there's a 2-day rule, there's 2 different types of 2-minute rules, one by James Clear and one by David Allen, and Mel Robbins even wrote an entire book just about the 5-second rule. So it's probably not necessary to overwhelm ourselves and dissect all these rules in detail, since they all cover the main principle of just reducing friction to get started. We do this by breaking big tasks, either physical or mental, into smaller tasks. But I'd like to highlight my favorite rules from James Clear, author of Atomic Habits. He offers us the 2-minute rule and the 2-day rule. So starting with the 2-minute rule, we take whatever we're trying to do and we scale it down to something that takes 2 minutes or less to do. So going for a daily jog now becomes put on my shoes every day, or reading an entire book every month becomes just read a single page a day. So we get the ball rolling with 2-minute rule, and then we keep the ball rolling with the 2-day rule, which states that we should never allow ourselves to procrastinate for 2 days in a row, because that will essentially kill our streak. And the consistency of doing something for 2 days, or I guess in procrastinator sense, not doing something for 2 days would be the start of a new procrastination habit. So to combine all these ideas, the 2-minute rule lowers friction so that we take the smallest, tiniest action and we do something, and then that action actually leads to motivation and momentum to overcome procrastination. The third idea is that procrastination is a result of poor planning. When we fail to plan, we plan to procrastinate. This idea really speaks to Torah Club, which is the type of person who is highly ambitious but doesn't always have the mental bandwidth to get things done. So I'm in Torah Club myself, and this has been the story of my life. I want to be ultra productive and literally do everything. I want to be a doctor, a YouTuber, a musician, a real estate investor, all these XYZ ambitions that are much more than I have the ability to even handle. So what usually ends up happening is that I just procrastinate on one or all of them. The problem here is that we're often too obsessed with ambition and the end results when we should pay more attention to the process that gets us there. So instead of obsessing over the goal of setting the curve on every exam, we should focus on the process, work on improving our study skills, and finding enjoyment in learning. Dan Gilbert, author of Stumbling on Happiness, talks about the idea that our desire to control outcomes leads to suffering, because as much as we hate to accept reality, we don't actually have control over anything except our own experience of life. So this idea combines with the first idea about negative emotions to send us far down the hole of procrastination. A better way of thinking about goals comes again from James Clear, who states that goals are just temporary. If our goal is to clean our room and we manage to clean it, who's to say it won't get dirty again next week? But if we focus on the process, focus on building declutter habits, or becoming a type of person who strives for organization all the time, then our room will always be clean. So instead of focusing on the goal of a clean room, we should focus on what we can control, which is identifying ourselves as a clean person. So Taurus, we procrastinate because the goal is too daunting, but we also procrastinate because we fail to prioritize the individual tasks that lead up to that goal. So for example, for a long time, I procrastinated on starting a side hustle because by the time I got home from school or from work, I was too tired to hustle anymore. So Dr. Jason Selk, author of Organize Tomorrow Today, suggests the 3-in-1 rule. He states that the 3 most important tasks that we want to do tomorrow should be planned today. And we want to do those tasks tomorrow, preferably in the morning before we get bombarded by the rest of the hectic day. He also recommends that we do that planning at lunchtime, during the day when we're not yet tired, and then we put a star next to that one important task that must be done tomorrow. So we can combine that with the 1 hour rule by Oliver Burkeman, author of 4,000 Weeks. He says to spend the first hour of the day working on the most important thing to you. So give the first hour of the day to yourself instead of giving it to your employer or to other obligations. So for example, if our goal is to make it onto the basketball team, but we don't make any time to practice every day, that dream will never come true. So give yourself the first hour of the day to practice shooting baskets. It doesn't even have to be an hour, it can be 30 minutes. So you wake up 30 minutes earlier and practice dribbling before school. Or you can even wake up just 15 minutes earlier and do short exercises so you're faster on the court. Because the idea is that if we're trying to practice at the end of the day, we're usually too tired and we just can't be bothered. So those are the 3 big ideas about procrastination that we've extracted from reading over 100 books and articles. Manage emotions, build momentum, and prioritize planning. All 3 of these are universally applicable, but each of them also speaks specifically to each of the 3 clubs. Now, if you're interested in more applicable tips for your brain type related to motivation, then definitely check out this video right here.